So, welcome back to the show. Before the break, we were discussing about the two type of photosensitive cells which are present on the retina. One is called cone cells. So, the point to remember, cone cells help us to see in bright light and also color vision. Cone cells contain a pigment called iodopsin. Then the next one is rod cells. Rod cells contain a pigment called rhodopsin. Rhodopsin help us to see in dim light. Then I told you rhodopsin in presence of the bright light, it split into two components called retinal and opsin. Opsin is a protein, retinal is formed from vitamin A, so it becomes inactive. But at the same time in dim light, these retinal and opsin once again join together to form the rhodopsin and help us to see in dim light. Retinal is a part of the rhodopsin which is formed from vitamin A. So, suppose if a person's food is deficient of vitamin A, then he will be suffering from a condition called night blindness. It is due to the deficiency of the pigment called or deficiency of a substance called retinal. Then another point to remember here is there is a point on the retina. Suppose if this is the retina, here is the optic nerve originating from the retina. There is a point on the retina where cone cells are abundant. Cones are abundant, but rods are absent. This is a point of clearest vision, and this point present on the retina, particular point on the retina where the cone cells are abundant and the rod cells are absent. This point is called yellow spot. So, it is a point of clearest vision. See look on the screen. You can see on the screen. This is also called, the yellow spot is also called the fovea. Fovea is a part of the retina where the cones are abundant and rods are absent. It is a point of clearest vision. But at the same time, point on the retina where the optic nerve originate. Point on the retina where the optic nerve originate. Both the rods and cones are absent. Rods are absent and the cones are also absent. This point on the retina where both the rods and cones are absent, where if an image is formed on this spot, it is not perceived, and this point is called blind spot. So, these are 2 points to remember. There is a point on the retina where the cones are abundant and rods are absent, and this is a point of clearest vision that is called yellow spot. And there is another point on the retina where the optic nerves originate. This is the optic nerve which carry the impulses to the brain so that we are able to see the object. So, the point where the optic nerve originate, both rods and cones are absent, and this point is called blind spot. Look at the screen, you can see the blind spot. So, these are the important points that we have to remember in the portion about the eye. Now, let us have a brief look at the various important points that we already discussed. See, one of the important point that we discussed is how are eyes protected. You can see that eyes are situated in a eye socket in the skull. Eyelids and eyelash protect from dust and other particles. Tears keep the eyes wet, washes the dust particles and also prevent infection. Then there is a transparent part just inside or just in front of the cornea, that is called the conjunctiva, in the exposed part of the eye, and that also protect the eye from dust particles. But here a point to remember is tear contains an enzyme. This is an important point called lysozyme. It acts as a germ killer. So, point to remember, tear contains an enzyme called lysozyme. Lysozyme acts as a germ killer, protect the eye from the infections. Then eyeball is a hollow sphere consisting of 3 layers. The outer layer, that is called sclera. You can see on the screen, it gives shape to the eyeball, and the transparent front part of the sclera is called cornea. Cornea helps in focusing the light rays. The second layer, that is a middle layer, it is thin and black membrane that supply nutrients and oxygen to the cells surrounding it. And just in the anterior part, the choroid has become a disc shaped structure that is called iris. The color of the iris varies in different people, and there is a convex lens placed just behind the iris, and at the center of the iris there is a small opening that is called pupil. Pupil regulate the amount of light entering the eye. Then the innermost layer, that is called retina. Retina is a photosensitive part of the eye. Retina, when we look at an object, image is formed on the retina. The image formed on the retina is a real and inverted diminished image. These image formed on the retina stimulate the photosensitive cells which are present in the retina. These photosensitive cells are called cones and rods. The rods and cones get sensitized, and this stimulus is carried by the optic nerve to the vision center of the brain, and it makes the vision a reality. Then another point to remember here, I already explained to you. In front of the lens there is a chamber that is called aqueous chamber. It is filled with a fluid called aqueous humor, and just behind the lens there is another chamber, a larger chamber, that is called vitreous chamber. It is filled with a jelly like fluid that gives firm or that maintain the shape of the eyeball. Then let us see one of the most important question that is expected from this part. The question is, in the question paper they will give you a diagram of the eye, a section of the eye, and some questions will be asked. So you have to redraw the diagram and answer the questions that follows the diagram. Let us see which are the important questions that is being asked from this part. One of the question is the transparent front portion of the eye, that it is already explained to you, that is called cornea. Another question, there is a black ball in the exposed part of the eye, that is called iris. In the center of the iris there is a hole, there is in the middle there is a small hole. What is the name of this hole? That is called a pupil. Then in front of the lens there is a chamber, that chamber is filled with a fluid. That is another question which is expected. This chamber is called aqueous chamber, and the fluid is called aqueous humor. And just behind the lens there is another chamber, that chamber is called vitreous chamber, and it is filled with a fluid, that fluid is called vitreous humor. Then another question is the layer on which image is formed. That is an important question. It is the question can be like this also, the layer where the image of the object is formed when we look at, or what is the innermost layer of the eyeball. The answer to this question is retina. Then I already explained to you the point of highest vision, that is called yellow spot, and there is a point on the retina where the image is not formed, or when the image is formed it is not perceived, that is called a blind spot. Another question which is expected from this part, it is the nerve which carry image formed on the retina to the brain, that is optic nerve. Then another question, that is to differentiate between blind spot and yellow spot. I already explained to you, the blind spot is a point on the retina where there are no photoreceptor cells, so that when an image is formed on the blind spot it is not perceived. Then yellow spot is a point on the retina where the cones are abundant, rods are absent, and when the image is formed on this point it is perceived, or we can say that it is a point of highest vision. Then another question is regarding the ability of the lens to adjust the focal length depending on the distance of the object that we are looking. It's already explained to you that when we are looking at distant object, the light rays from the distant object when enter into the eye, the ciliary muscles or the muscles which are connected to the lens, these ciliary muscles relax. When the ciliary muscles relax, lens become thin. When the lens become, or the convexity of the lens increases. When the convexity of the lens increases, the focal length increases, so that the image is formed on the retina. Suppose at the same time, when we are looking an object near or a near object, then the light rays when enter into the eye, the ciliary muscles contract. When the ciliary muscles contract, lens become thicker. When the lens become thicker, the convexity decreases, so that the image is again formed on the retina. Then another question that is expected from this portion is, what are the characteristics of the image formed on the retina? That is real, inverted, diminished, real, inverted and diminished image. Then quite naturally you will ask a question, how we are able to see the correct image? That is done by the brain. So the image formed on the retina and it is carried to the brain is a real and inverted image, and when it reaches the brain, it becomes correct. So it is a brain, or it is a cerebrum, or the vision center in the cerebrum, that makes vision a reality. Then we have two eyes. When we look at an object, two images are formed in two eyes, but two images are formed, two eyes pointing to the same direction, so that when we look at an object, two images are formed in the two eyes. But at the same time, we can see only one image. Here, the point to remember is, these two images formed in the eyes is carried to the brain, where it is fused, so that only one image is perceived. This ability of the eye is called binocular vision. What is the importance of binocular vision? Is our vision is three-dimensional. That means we can see both length, breadth and height. So point to remember, two images are formed in the eye. These two images are fused in the cerebrum, so that only one is perceived. This ability is called binocular vision. Binocular vision, what is the importance of binocular vision? Is binocular vision, as a result of the binocular vision, our vision is three-dimensional vision. Then another point to remember from this part is, what happened to the size of the pupil? Here in the exposed part, there is a black ball, and at the center of the black ball there is a small opening that is called pupil. The pupil can regulate the amount of light entering into the eye. When we are walking in the bright light, the size of the pupil decreases. When we are walking in the dim light, the size of the pupil increases. How it happens? This is because there are two types of muscles around the pupil. I'll show you on the board. Suppose you consider this is a pupil. There are two types of muscles around the pupil. One is called circular muscles, and the other is called radial muscles. Two types of muscles. There are two types of muscles around the pupil. One is circular muscle, and the other is radial muscles. So the pupil can regulate the size, or the size of the pupil can be regulated with the help of these two muscles. So when we are walking in the bright light, the size of the pupil decreases because it is due to the contraction of the circular muscles. But at the same time, when you are walking in the dim light, the size of the pupil increases. It is because of the contraction of the radial muscles. Then once again, another point to remember from this part is, in the eye there are two types of photosensitive cells. One is rods and the other is cones. Rods contain a pigment called a rhodopsin. It helps us to see in dim light. And the cones contain a pigment called iodopsin or photopsin, and it helps us to see in bright light. Here you can see a question here. Rod cells contain pigment called a rhodopsin, vision in dim light, and the cone cells contain pigment called photopsin, vision in bright light. Then another question which can be expected from this portion is regarding vitamin A. Suppose if a person's food is deficient of vitamin A, then I already explained to you that a part of the rhodopsin called retinal, it is formed from vitamin A. Suppose if a person's food is deficient, of the diet is deficient of the vitamin A that leads to a condition called night blindness, because the retinal is formed from vitamin A. Then another question that is expected from this part, it is owl has no vision in daytime because their retina lacks cones completely. So with this we are concluding our discussion about the eye. Now let us move on to the next sensory organ, that is the ear. Ear has two functions. One is it is the organ of hearing, and the second function of the ear, it is helps to maintain the balance of the body. So ear has two functions. One is ear is an organ of hearing, and the second one is ear helps to maintain the balance of the body. Let us see a detailed structure of the ear. You can see on the screen, ear can be divided into three parts. Look at the screen. Ear can be divided into three parts: outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. Outer ear consisting of a funnel like structure that is called a pinna. What is the role of the pinna is to collect the sound waves. Then these sound waves are directed to the next part of the outer ear. The next part of the outer ear, that is the ear canal or auditory canal. Ear canal or auditory canal, and at the end of the auditory canal there is a obliquely placed membrane that is called eardrum or tympanic membrane. The details regarding the detailed functions of the different parts of the ear and also the remaining part of the ear we will be discussing in the next class.